For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the who? The very elect. The very elect. Who are the very elect? Oh, yes, because you have your name on a church book, you think you're elect? That's not it. Because you go to church on Saturday, you're elect? No, that's not it. The elect, we're told by the pen of inspiration, the elect are those who believe that God can and will save them from sin. Not in sin, but from sin. Here we have a picture. It was a picture that was on the front cover of a ministerial magazine, a magazine for the clergy. It is supposed to be depicting the second coming of Jesus Christ based upon the Bible and the spirit of prophecy. I challenge anyone to come up with this picture based upon Scripture, based upon inspiration. I was doing some meetings in West Virginia. I was sharing some of these, and I shared this picture along with some other pictures there. A lady who was there used to be a witch. God saved her from being a witch. She became a member of our church. And she shared 32 spiritualistic symbols in this picture. And yet it was given to clergy around this country and other parts of the world. Other parts of the world. I don't know who this is. I know for certain it's not Jesus Christ, but it could be his imposter. That's for sure. It's got people clinging on, those who are going to be lost. And they've got like demons hanging on to them. You have people that are like spirits. You can see the feet of this person through this person here who's part flesh and part spirit. Symbols. Spiritualism. Upward Look, page 317, the pen of inspiration writes, I warn our people that right among us some will turn away from the faith and give heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils, and by them the truth will be evil spoken of. I warn our people that among us some are going to fall away into spiritualism. And I'm sharing with you that if we're involved with Harry Potter, if we're watching Medium, if we're involved in all these different movies and television shows that are promoting all this garbage, when the test comes, unless you're part of the elect, you're going to be swept away. There's another issue. Spiritual gifts. Volume 3. Something that would be taking place in the world just before the close of probation and Jesus comes. Spiritual Gifts, Volume 3, page 64. I read this. If there was one sin above another which called for the destruction of the race by the flood, it was the base crime of amalgamation of man and beast, which defaced the image of God and caused confusion everywhere. Inspiration said if there's one sin that brought on the flood and the destruction of the world, it was the base crime of amalgamation, of combining human beings and animals which deface the image of God. Now, a lot of people say, oh, that's not amalgamation. Amalgamation is these other animals and plants. And no. This one defaces the image of God, ladies and gentlemen. And the only creature created in his image was man. It says that this was going on in the days of the flood. Have you ever wondered why these folks that are involved in evolution and they find some bones in West Africa someplace and they date them back to being so many thousands upon thousands and tens of thousands of years old that looks like it's partly human and partly monkey? You ever wonder about that? Could it have been going on back in their day? You got to remember, they lived to be 800 years old. They were much more intelligent than we are today. We're only using maybe less than 10% of our brains. They used a whole lot more back in that day. We've fallen for 4,000 years since then in sin. Amalgamation, what is it? It is the mixture, the blending, or the combination of two species. Washington Post, November 04. Stem cell research. What's happening in our world? In Minnesota, pigs are being born with human blood in their veins. In Nevada, there are sheep whose livers and hearts are largely human. In California, mice peer from their cages with human brain cells firing in their skulls. This is what's happening in the laboratories across America. But that's only a little bit of what is taking place, ladies and gentlemen. These are not outcasts from the island of Dr. Moreau, the 1869 novel of H.G. Wells, in which the rogue doctor develops creatures that are part animal and part human. They are real creations of real scientists stretching the boundaries of stem cell research. Biologists call these hybrid animals chimeras, after the mythical Greek creature with a lion's head, a goat's body, a serpent's tail. They are the products of experiments in which human stem cells are added to developing animal fetuses. National Post Online wrote, "Man-beast hybrid beyond talking stage. Melding man and beast may sound like stuff from science fiction, but it is not. Amid all the advances in genetic manipulation, the idea of combining the DNA of animals and humans has gone beyond the talking stage. It's been attempted. Indeed, many scientists and academics are wondering how far it might go and what the ethical implications would be. If a human were crossed with a chimpanzee, for example, would it still be human? And if not, then what would it be? As far as we know, it would still look like a human being, but some of the characteristics of individual cells might be slightly different," said James Cross, a molecular biologist at the University of Calgary. "This suggests that we can create a new human-animal species," said Jerry Rifkin. Rifkin called the experiment the most extraordinary single development in the history of biotechnology. Ladies and gentlemen, can you understand what's going on? We're told that this would be taking place just before the close of probation. Last October, Greenpeace Germany dug up a patent claim for a similar human-animal hybrid. Only this time it involved a pig. U.S.-based biotransplant and Austro-based stem cell sciences grew a pig-human embryo to 32 cells before ending its life. If the embryo had lived, it would have been 95% human, said Michael Koo. The possibilities are not only frightening, but it's unknown just how many other similar patent applications are out there. This is what we know happening in our country. What is happening where they're not regulated in other parts of the world? Chimpanzees share about between 95% and 98% of our genes, so the prospect of creating a human-chimpanzee hybrid are highly probable, Rifkin said. Right now, technology is way ahead of ethics. Oh, I see faces. Faces that are grinching, squinching. This is what's going on, ladies and gentlemen. This is what's happening. We were told that these things would happen just before human probation closes. MSNBC, April 29, 2005. Biological mixing of species. But the biological commingling of animal and human is now evolving into more exotic and unsettling mixes of species, invoking the Greek myth of the monstrous chimera. What is a chimera again? A monster in Greek mythology that has the head of a lion, the body of a goat, the tail of a dragon, an organism or a recombinant DNA molecule created by joining DNA fragments from two or more different organisms, according to the Bitech Dictionary. Some time ago on PBS, they had a program called Bloodlines. It says, "Are we creating a world that we won't want to inhabit?" And this is what they presented, or a portion that was presented on this program.
A human, non-human animal that's a mixture.
We've applied for a patent on part human, part chimpanzee.
How are new life technologies challenging what it means to be human?
Well, you might be surprised that mammals of different species, such as sheep and goats, for example, can be combined at the early embryo stages, and their cells cooperate and give rise to a composite organism. It's called a chimera.
Really?
You simply take cells from different species, you jumble them together, you grow them for a while, in a petri dish, and then you can implant them into a surrogate mother of either species.
And this can be done now? I mean, it seems as though it's some futuristic idea that...
No, it's perfectly feasible to do it now.
Has anyone tried this yet?
Well, it's been tried with goats and sheep, and this was back in the 1980s, and they were called geeps. Humans and chimpanzees are closer to each other genetically than sheep and goats are. So if this type of thing is possible with sheep and goats, it's almost certainly possible with chimpanzees and humans. Yes, in fact, we've applied for a patent on an embryo that's part human and part chimpanzee.
Part chimpanzee? Why are you going to do this? I mean, what, are you...
Well, there's a scientific motivation, there's a medical motivation. These animals would be perfect donors for transplanted hearts, kidneys. Half the cells in their body would be human cells.
There's a number of applications that raise issues similar to yours, and we've collected here a series of patents that have been issued since we filed your case that raise some of those issues. Things like transgenic animals, cloning techniques, ES cell-based techniques. There's one here, transgenic swine and swine cells.
That's very interesting because here they are actually causing these organisms to exhibit human characteristics by putting in human genes, so these tissues would not be rejected by a human recipient. So if they're already issuing patents on pigs with human genes, how many human genes would it take for them to start saying, well, you're doing something that embraces a human? I mean, they have...
We don't have a very good legal grounding to answer the question, what is human? And yet, so much of our lives depend on that criteria. Issues like how we treat one another, what our rights and responsibilities are. If I encounter an entity that has half chimp genes and half human genes, how do I relate to it? The law will govern such things as whether that animal, entity, human can be killed at will, whether it has a right to attend public schools, whether it has freedom of speech.
If the Supreme Court and the Patent Office have gone so far as to accept patents on non-human animals and patents on human cells and patents on human embryo stem cells, why shouldn't they allow a patent on something that's half human? This is perfectly feasible and perfectly legal and perfectly useful at the present time.
It says it's perfectly legal and it's personally feasible, but he didn't say anything about ethical. He didn't say anything about moral, did he?